God of War 4's story is all about family, about parents and their children, about how children are shaped by their parents, and this seemingly impossible task that parents face in trying to raise children to be better than themselves. This is the task that Kratos faces in raising his son Atreus, to raise his son to be better than the monster he used to be. And it's also a story about love, a parent's love, and the two-sided nature of that love. A parent's love can be uplifting, enriching, transformative. A childhood with a lot of love should be a happy childhood. But parental love can also be stifling. It can be overprotective and overbearing. A parent's love is often tied up in feelings of fear for their child's life, anxiety for their future. This fear can lead a parent to push too hard, to control too much. In the center of all the game's themes of parents and children and love and fear is Baldur. Baldur is first and foremost a fantastic villain. Baldur is a wrecking ball. He crashes into Kratos and Atreus' life out of nowhere, shatters their sense of normalcy, their sense of safety. It's Baldur who actually launches them on their adventure. Laufey's dying wish is for Kratos and Atreus to scatter her ashes on the highest peak in the realms. But Kratos refuses to start on that journey. He feels that both he and Atreus are not ready. But when Baldur invades their home, Kratos has no choice but to leave. So in some ways, Baldur is responsible for everything that happens in this game. Baldur's voice actor Jeremy Davies puts on a huge performance in this game. By comparison, I think Kratos, Atreus, and Freya's voice actors all have much subtler performances. Baldur's is super broad. He's fun to watch and listen to. Every time he's in a scene, he totally takes over that scene. He comes off as emotionally unstable, even slightly insane. Every time he shows up, something breaks, usually a lot of things. He is angry, he is violent, he is powerful, he is dangerous. Even after all the dozens of gods and mythological monsters Kratos has slaughtered over the course of his long, god-killing career, the developers still managed to make Baldur feel really dangerous. At the start of the game, Baldur seems invincible because that's exactly what he is. Thanks to the effects of a magical spell or curse, Baldur is unkillable. But with all that said, what makes Baldur a truly great villain, and one of my personal favorite villains in any story ever, is how well he fits into the story's themes. The way his story enhances, complicates, and deepens the game's themes of parents, children, love, and hate. Because Baldur is also a son. He is the son of Freya and Odin, and while we don't get much information about his relationship with his father, we do know that his life was totally shaped by his relationship with his mother. Freya loved her son deeply, loved him more than anything, but this boundless parental love, instead of raising Baldur up, raising him into a good man, instead it ultimately destroyed his life, turned him bitter, resentful, and hateful. Freya received a prophecy that someday Baldur would die a needless death. She could not accept this. She loved her son too much to let him die, to let him go. She loved him too much to let him live his own life, to face death on his own terms. So, in an act of desperation, an act that was fueled by both love and selfishness, love for her son but a selfish need to not allow herself to be hurt by his death, she cast a spell on Baldur. This spell made him invincible. He could never be hurt again. He would never die. This should have been awesome. Never having to worry about getting hurt or dying is pretty sweet. But the spell had other effects too. The spell stripped him of nearly all his senses. He could not taste, could not smell, could not feel. Sure, he can't feel pain, but he can also never feel pleasure. For the rest of his life, which will be forever since he can't die, he will never feel anything ever again. Could you imagine how empty life would be without ever being able to taste food, never able to feel warmth or softness, no physical pleasure whatsoever? But that's really not the worst of it. It would be one thing if Baldur chose this for himself, if he decided on his own to sacrifice physical pleasure in exchange for physical invulnerability, but he didn't get the chance to make that choice. Freya decided it for him. She cast the spell without even asking him what he wanted. Her true mistake wasn't casting behind the spell. It was that she did it without his consent. That's how we know it was a selfish decision, that she did it for herself and not for him. If she was doing it for him, she would have asked him what he wanted, but she didn't care what he wanted. She only cared about what she wanted, which was to not lose her son. And as noble a motivation as that might be, it doesn't make what she did right. Ironically, she lost her son anyway. In her attempt to save his life, she ended up ruining his life. In her attempt to keep him by her side forever, instead she ended up pushing him away forever. Over the decades, Baldur's bitterness and resentment curdled into a dark hatred, and he became determined to murder his own mother in revenge for what she had done to him. But let's get back to Kratos. Kratos is terrified of raising his son the wrong way. He is intimately familiar with the ways that godhood and the incredible power that comes with it can spoil people, the way it can turn them selfish, indifferent, even merciless towards those less powerful than themselves. The gods in this series tend to commit terrible and evil crimes. Kratos himself is a god with a history of rage and violence. He himself has been selfish, indifferent, and merciless. He has killed not just evil gods, but innocents too. He has been a monster. He doesn't want that for his son. He wants his son to live a better life than he did. So Kratos' father was Zeus, and Zeus was a really bad guy. He was manipulative, murderous, uncaring, possessed by the evils of Pandora's box. It really shouldn't be that hard for Kratos to be a better father to Atreus than Zeus was to him. All he really has to do is be present for his son's upbringing, and then to not literally murder his own son. And just like that, Kratos is a better father than Zeus ever was. But in Baldur's story, we see another possible failure of parenthood. With Baldur and Freya, we see that it's possible to love too much, for that love to be selfish. And Freya's brand of overbearing parental love can be just as disastrous as Zeus's callous indifference. In this way, Baldur represents a potential future for Atreus. If Kratos fails as a parent, in all of the hundreds of ways it's possible to fail as a parent, this is what Atreus could become: bitter, angry, resentful, violent. Gods wield too much power to make mistakes in their upbringing. When a god is raised wrong, it has consequences for the whole world. The stakes here are really high, and it even almost happens in the game. As soon as Atreus discovers that he is a god, that he is powerful, he begins to lose his compassion. He starts to treat everyone around him worse. He outright murders Modi. In this moment, we're seeing an Atreus who turns out a lot like Baldur. But not only is Baldur a potential future for Atreus, he is also a kind of foil to Kratos himself. Back in God of War 3, Kratos was a character who had been manipulated and betrayed by his father and the other Greek gods. He was filled with bitterness and anger and rage. He was consumed by hatred. He became obsessed with revenge. His only purpose in life was the death of his father Zeus and anyone else who got in his way. And doesn't that sound a lot like Baldur in God of War 4? Baldur also feels like he has been manipulated and betrayed by a parent. Baldur is also filled with bitterness and anger and rage. He has also sworn that he will kill that parent. In a lot of ways, these are kind of the same character. The difference in the present is that Kratos is older, that Kratos has had time to find other things to live for besides revenge, has found people he cares about, has come to regret the man he once was. So Baldur is a foil to both Atreus and Kratos. At the end of the game, when Kratos and Atreus face off against Baldur in the final battle, Atreus is facing off against his worst possible future, while Kratos is simultaneously facing off against the darkest parts of his past. And so when they defeat Baldur together, and it's really important that they do it together, they're also thematically defeating these worst versions of themselves. They are both thematically overcoming their worst selves. From here, I want to watch each of Baldur's scenes in the game because they are all phenomenally well written, acted, and animated. These cutscenes are a masterclass in cinematic video game storytelling, and we can see how the developers and writers are building Baldur's character in series. scene. So let's start by watching Baldur's explosive introduction. At this point in the game, Kratos has refused the call, refused to embark on the hero's journey. He doesn't feel that either he or Atreus are ready for the journey. He has chosen to stay where he feels safe, and then here comes Baldur to force him to make a different choice.
I thought you'd be bigger. But you're definitely the one. Long way from home, aren't you?
What do you want?
Oh, you already know the answer to that.
Whatever it is you seek, I do not have it. You should move on.
And here I thought your kind was supposed to be so enlightened, so much better than us, so much smarter. And yet you hide out here in the woods, like a coward.
You do not want this fight.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I do.
Leave my home.
You are going to have to kill me for that to happen.
I warned you.
Finally.
You would not listen.
Fine. My turn. How incredibly disappointing. Come on, then.
The first time I ever played this game, Baldur totally kicked my butt in this fight. The game up to this point had been pretty easy, just a tutorial really, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into this boss fight against some crazy guy who just does not care how many times he gets punched in the face. I only ended up winning by the skin of my teeth. There's this awesome moment during the battle where Kratos is throwing Baldur, and mid-swing you get this close-up on Baldur, and he is actually laughing because he cares so little about the beating he's taken. It's a fantastic boss battle, and I think this was the moment that I fell in love with this game. But let's rewind back to the start of the scene. What does Baldur want here? Odin has sent him to track down Laufey, Kratos' wife, the last giant in Midgard. To complete this mission, all Baldur has to do is say, "I'm looking for Laufey," and then Kratos could say, "She's dead, there's her body, see you later." Then they both could have moved on with their separate lives. If all Baldur wanted was to do Odin's bidding, then that's all he really needed to say. But Baldur doesn't really care about that. That's just an excuse for him. He very intentionally starts a fight, not to complete Odin's mission, not to prove anything, but for another and much more selfish reason. At the end of the fight, Baldur says, "I'd hoped that you, of everyone I've faced, would finally make me feel something, but you can't." That's Baldur's true motivation at the start of this scene. He wants to finally feel something. For all of his talk of, "If you'd only told me what I wanted to know, this wouldn't have happened," it's not true. This confrontation was always going to end in a fight, because that's what Baldur really wanted. Baldur knows who Kratos is. He knows Kratos' reputation. Kratos has slaughtered like an entire pantheon of gods. If anyone in the world has the power to actually make Baldur feel pain, it would be Kratos. Or perhaps it's even darker than that. As we'll see later, Baldur doesn't just want to feel pain, he wants to die. He wants someone to kill him. He is deeply unhappy. He is sick of living this life. And Kratos is a god killer. Kratos is the god killer. No one in the world has killed more gods than Kratos. I think Baldur actually wanted to die in this scene. I think what he really wanted was for Kratos to kill him here. I always thought that moment when Baldur is lying on the ground muttering to himself, "No, no, 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 no," was really weird. Like, what is he saying no to? No what? But if he actually wanted Kratos to kill him, then that explains his strange reaction. As soon as he gets punched, he realizes that Kratos does not have the power to kill him, doesn't even have the power to make him feel any pain. This is a huge disappointment. That's why he makes the turn to actually trying to get the information Odin was looking for. Whereas before, all he wanted was a fight. But let's rewind again, back to that very first shot we see of Baldur. I absolutely love this character's visual design. Visually, he is immediately interesting. Firstly, because he's shirtless in the freezing Scandinavian winter, but also because his body is covered in these absolutely gorgeous tattoos and runes. What I find interesting about these tattoos is that they don't really have any visual flow or aesthetic. There's no larger interconnected design to them. Instead, they're kind of scattered all over his body, almost randomly. They are visually cluttered and chaotic, almost on top of each other. And of course, this parallels the chaotic, scattered, messy nature of his character. Baldur is chaos, and you can see that reflected in his visual design the very first moment you see him. Fans have translated some of the runes on his tattoos. Apparently, the red ones on his back say "cursed." The ones on his arms say "never forgive." The circular one on his chest supposedly says something to the effect of, "I confide the light within myself that I might feel something." And the runes on his neck say, "I mark the sunset of the gods," which are all thematically appropriate. He is also really skinny, even kind of lanky and scrawny. He doesn't look as strong as he actually is. He's not nearly as muscular or big as nearly any other god we see in this series. Partly this just reflects that he probably doesn't eat very much, since food is not a pleasure to him, but I also think the developers wanted Baldur to appear unhealthy. There's also those huge dark circles under his eyes, and his skin is nearly as pale as Kratos is. These also contribute to his unhealthy appearance, which matches the deep emotional sickness within his character. His first lines, "I thought you'd be bigger, you're definitely the one," "I thought your kind was supposed to be so enlightened," are all meant to show that Baldur knows exactly who Kratos is and exactly where he came from, even though both the audience and Kratos himself have no clue who Baldur is yet. This informational imbalance makes him seem all the more intimidating. I think it's also really important that it's Baldur who throws the first punch here. Baldur is intentionally vague about what he's looking for. Like, how the heck would Kratos know what he's looking for? He wants to start a fight. Next, let's watch the moment when Baldur reveals his inability to feel.
When Odin sent me here, I just needed answers, but you had to act all proud. Throw whatever you have at me. I'll keep coming. That old body will give out. But before I end this, I want you to know one thing. I can't feel any of this.
I just completely adore the voice actor's delivery of that line. The way he says, "I can't feel anything." There's a hysteria in that line. Listen to the way his voice goes up in pitch, the way his voice sort of wavers. It's almost as if he's about to either burst out laughing or burst into a terrible, screeching scream. He sounds completely insane in this moment, and I think there really is an insanity lurking within Baldur's mind. This character is mentally and emotionally unwell. His sickness is hatred. He is so angry and has been angry for so long that it has made him both physically and mentally ill. This battle ends with Kratos actually snapping Baldur's neck. Baldur may be invulnerable, but apparently his neck can be broken, and that will incapacitate him for at least a little while. Baldur's next appearance is at the top of the mountain, where we see him interrogating Mimir and leading Magni and Modi in the search for Kratos. It's actually the only time in the entire series where we see Baldur interact with any other Aesir. He's not very impressed with them and calls them both idiots. He clearly really doesn't care about them much either, since he never comments on their deaths later. We're gonna skip right past this and over to his next appearance, which occurs a couple hours later, and also takes place at the summit of the mountain.
Beautiful, isn't it? Why, I remember once... Brother, look out!
Miss me?
Run, boy! Cross the bridge!
No! I'm a god too! I can do this! Get off him!
Really?
Baldur, let him go! Take me instead, I'll do whatever you...
Shut up! All this time I thought I needed you! But you're just meat. Turns out the boy's the brains.
No! You broke the gate! That was our only way to Jotunheim!
Stupid son of a bitch!
Get out of here, boy.
Yes, by all means, Junior, run away. Let Daddy do all the heavy lifting for you.
Let go!
Calm down, boy. You are not ready for this.
I am ready!
And here I thought my family was fucked up. Oh, your father is right, boy. You are far from ready. Now would you be so kind as to hold this for me? Thank you.
Atreus!
Earlier, I described Baldur as a wrecking ball, someone who charges in out of nowhere and just immediately wrecks everything. And you can definitely see that aspect of his character in this scene. Something else on display here that we haven't seen much of before is Baldur's sense of humor. It is a dark and mean-spirited sense of humor, but a lot of what he says here is genuinely pretty funny. Like when he says, "The boy is the brains," or when he just sits back and lets Kratos and Atreus fight amongst themselves, or that delightful little twirling wave he does when he says thank you. This is the only scene in the game when Baldur actually seems to be kind of enjoying himself. The only scene where he expresses any emotion other than anger. I think what we're seeing here is probably Baldur's normal self. This is how he behaves when he's in control, when things are going his way. This is probably how he interacts with his family at home in Asgard. His dialogue here reminds me a lot of Heimdall's dialogue in Ragnarok. They both have this insulting, mocking, sarcastic, biting sense of humor. However, whereas Heimdall is more of a preening, narcissist bully, I think Baldur is a much darker character. There's so much more anger within him. Baldur feels more dangerous to me, like he might descend into a violent rage at any moment. Heimdall had a lot more control over himself and his emotions. I really wish we had an opportunity to see Baldur interacting with the rest of his family. I'd be most curious to see how he interacts with Odin and Thor in particular. Do you think Baldur would behave as submissively towards Odin as Heimdall does? Do you think there exists any brotherly affection at all between Baldur and Thor? It's too bad we'll never know. Anyway, Baldur flies away on an armored dragon, and then Kratos leaps onto the back of that dragon. As the battle begins, Baldur has already lost all of that humor and silliness he was showing before. In a rage, he yells, "Don't you know when to give up?" And later he cries out, "Why won't you die?" He sounds really frustrated when he says those lines. As soon as Baldur isn't in total control of the situation anymore, his humorous and sarcastic facade vanishes, and he is overwhelmed by his anger again. I think he's the kind of character who isn't used to losing, isn't used to not getting his way. Baldur has probably never lost a fight before, never had this much trouble completing a mission, and it infuriates him. Next, Kratos slices open the dragon's wings, and then the dragon crashes into Tyr's temple, and Baldur attempts to open a portal to Asgard to summon help in his fight against Kratos. There's a very small moment during this next confrontation that I want to watch, so that you can hear the way Baldur's voice actor delivers this specific line.
Baldur!
No! Listen to me!
Let me out!
Let go of it now or I will kill him. You know I will. What did you do?
Listen to the way he says, "Let go of it now or I will kill him. You know I will." Doesn't he sound so freaking menacing here? He sounds terrifying. Something that I haven't really discussed much in this analysis so far is that Baldur really is a genuinely evil character. We've talked a lot about how he got screwed over by his mother and how crappy his life has been because of his loss of physical sensations. But Baldur is a bad guy and his past does not justify that. I don't doubt for a second that Baldur really would have murdered Atreus here if he could. Baldur is willing to murder children to get his way. He is a terrible person and a dangerous person. There's this line in their very first encounter when Baldur says, "I'm not my brother," and he's referring to Thor. He's claiming that he's not as bad or destructive a person as Thor is. But I think Baldur is actually a much more dangerous character than Thor. As terrible as Thor's sins are, the god of thunder doesn't strike me as a child murderer. After this, Kratos, Atreus, and Baldur all get trapped in Helheim. Part of the torturous magic of Helheim is that your worst memories get replayed for you over and over again on an endless loop. So Atreus sees himself murder Modi, Kratos sees Zeus, and Baldur sees his mother. And this is one of the most interesting scenes in the game, because not only do we get to see Baldur confront his mother over what she did to him, but we also get to see a younger Baldur, a far less angry and emotionally sick Baldur, and we even get to compare the two versions of him side by side. So here it is.
No. I would never
Stay out of sight.
Listen.
You had no right.
I had every right. I am your mother.
You had no right, Witch. I can't taste. I can't smell. I can't even feel the temperature of this room. Feasting, drinking, women. It's all gone.
You'll never
Gone.
feel pain again. Death has no power over you now. You would rather die?
Never feel again? Yes. Yes. I would rather die. Yes. Take it away, Mother.
I can't.
Please take it away.
It doesn't work like that. Son, trust me, in time, you will thank me. You will thank me.
Come on. Yes. I won't. Come on. Ruin my life.
Honey, we can figure this out. I promise. Trust me. I know how to.
You can't fix it. Come on. Do it! Do it! Come on! Cow. I never want to see you again. Never. What you did to me. What you did to me! Ah! Ah! Ah!
The most fascinating part of this scene to me is seeing the differences in behavior between Baldur now and his past self, both emotionally and physically. Let's start with his physical behavior. We can see that his past self, despite being very upset, very emotional, is physically pretty calm up until he grabs his mother's throat, which obviously isn't very chill at all. But before that moment, he's not bouncing around, he's not shadow boxing, he's not flying all over the place. Physically, in his mannerisms, in his animations, he's not behaving like the erratic Baldur we know. Now, look at his present self. Look at the way he is bouncing around, the way he paces constantly, like he can't stop moving. Look how much frantic energy there is in his present self animations. This is where we learn that Baldur didn't used to be this way, wasn't always so frantic and emotional and wild. Back then, he didn't just have control over his emotions, but he had control over his body too. This change is representative of an emotional sickness that has gotten much worse over time. The other big difference we see is how much angrier Baldur is in the present. Back then, Baldur was really upset. He was desperate. He begged his mother to take the spell back. And in the grip of these intense emotions, he grabs his mother by her neck. But he doesn't kill her, he relents. He doesn't really want to hurt her. His anger, his hatred, his obsession with revenge had not consumed him yet. In the present, Baldur is desperate to kill his mother. Instead of begging for her to take the spell away, he begs his past self to murder her. He even starts screaming and wildly punching her apparition. And the scene ends with Baldur collapsing to the ground and weeping. He is so pitiful here, so pathetic. Baldur is a broken man. He is sick and has been sick for a very long time. One mark of really good writing is if the writers can manage to get you to feel sorry for the villains, especially for a villain as dark and violent as Baldur. And the writers totally nail it in this scene. I felt so bad for him here. And what feels worst of all is that I don't think there's any hope for his character. He is so angry and so emotionally sick. What can be done for him? How could he ever heal from this? The only thing I can think of is that he would need to do what Kratos did at the end of God of War 3, which is to just disappear, vanish over the horizon, try to build a new life somewhere very far away from his family and his sins. Next, let's fast forward to when Baldur and Freya finally meet in the flesh for the first time in 100 years.
I had a feeling that hurting the big snake would bring the two of you out in the open. Do you have any idea at all, what you have cost me?
My boy.
Mother.
I'm here. Don't run away.
Oh, I'm not going anywhere, Mother.
I know that you're still angry. I know that how you feel hasn't changed, but I want you to...
How I feel? How I feel? I've spent the last 100 years dreaming of this moment. I rehearsed everything I ever wanted to say to you, every word, to make you understand exactly what you stole from me. But now, I realize I don't need you to understand anything. I don't need you at all.
No, back off, Kratos. This has nothing to do...
This path you walk, vengeance, you will find no peace. I know.
You... I'll deal with you later. But family first. This again?
What exactly is Baldur referring to when he says, "Do you have any idea what you have cost me?" My first thought was that he was just referring to losing his dragon, but on second thought, I don't think so. I doubt his dragon mount was really all that important to him, and I suspect he could get a new one if he really wanted to. Instead, I think he's referring to his experience in Helheim. When he saw that vision in Helheim of himself confronting his mother, that must have torn open a very old wound for him. It reminded him how humiliated he felt back then, how desperate, how his mother had not only betrayed him, but then told him that eventually he would thank her for doing it, which is an infuriating thing to hear. It reminded him how much he hated his mother, how broken he was inside still. In this line, I think he's referring to the emotional toll of traversing Helheim, which he blames on Kratos. This is probably the worst possible time for Freya to attempt a reconciliation. Baldur has been having a terrible day. In Helheim, he was just reminded how much he hated her, how much he wanted her dead, and why. I do wonder if, under different circumstances, he might have been more open to speaking to her, but right now, he is far too angry to even give her a chance. I also think Baldur is actually pretty sympathetic in this scene. Freya really isn't nailing this apology. If she'd said to him what she said to Kratos earlier, that she recognized that her spell was a selfish choice, that she knew she had hurt him, that it was her fault, that she wanted to make it up to him somehow, he might have been more receptive. Instead, she stumbles into saying the absolute worst possible thing. And I do think Baldur's anger here is justified. She stole a lifetime of feeling from him for her own selfish reasons and still hasn't apologized for it. Thinks she can just randomly waltz back into his life and expect him to be okay with that. Part of what makes Baldur such a well-written villain is how sympathetic he is. He has been wrong. He does deserve some kind of justice. But at the same time, he is so twisted inside, so angry, so violent. Some of that, maybe a lot of it, is his own fault. We cannot control what is done to us, however right or however wrong, but we do have some control over how we respond to those things. We have control over how we treat others. Baldur is a character who treats everyone around him terribly, horribly. He is an awful person, and Baldur is a character who is given chances to be better. In this final sequence, he is given opportunities over and over again to make a better choice. Like right here when Kratos is being so genuine with him, empathizing with him, telling him, "I've walked this path before, I know how it ends, I know that it sucks, don't do this." And each time Baldur chooses to keep being the same angry person he's been for the last century. Next, let's jump ahead to when Baldur is freed from his magical curse.
This won't be pretty.
I won't let you hurt him.
No, boy.
Fine.
Stop! No! No! Atreus! You're bleeding. Breathe, boy. Breathe!
Not my blood.
What is that? I can feel this. I can feel everything.
He's vulnerable now?
In this moment, Baldur finally gets everything he wanted. He has his senses back. He can feel everything again. He can feel pleasure. He has his life back. He can go out and live his life again. He can go do everything he ever wanted to do. But watch his face in this scene. Watch how the expression on his face changes. Look how it goes from a sort of wonder and then right back into that angry expression he's been wearing for the whole game. Even now, at what should be his happiest moment, when he has a chance to let it all go and move on and be happy, instead it is swallowed up in this bitter anger. Baldur is a character who is weighed down by his anger. He cannot get out from underneath of it, even at what should be his happiest moment. The rest of this fight is totally awesome, both from the sense of spectacle and scale, the mechanics, but also from a character perspective. This battle is the first time Baldur has felt anything in a century, and he loves it. He is overjoyed. There's this weird mix of fury and elation in all of his lines. He's totally pissed off at Kratos, but at the same time he loves the feeling of battle. He loves the pain, the ice, the burning. He is ecstatic. The character is experiencing a really unusual mix of intense emotions during this battle, and the voice actor is doing an awesome job of conveying each of them to the audience. I really can't say enough about what a fantastic job Jeremy Davies does in this game. Finally, let's watch Baldur's death scene to see how this villain meets his end.
Come on! Do it! Do it!
Stop. Please.
He's beaten, Father. Not a threat.
You will not come for us again. You will not touch her.
I don't need your protection.
Help yourself. Can you, Mother? No matter what I do or say, you won't stop interfering in my life.
I was just trying to protect you. I've made mistakes. I know. But you're free now. You have what you want. Try to find forgiveness. We can build something new.
No. We can't. Because I will never forgive. You still need to pay for the lifetime that you stole from me.
I have paid. I have paid. But if that alone will make you whole, if seeing me dead will make things right, I won't stop you.
I know.
What? No, Baldur!
I love you.
Why do you even care? You could have walked away.
The Cygolians here must be better than this.
no, my boy! My dear sweet boy!
Here, with Kratos strangling him, Baldur doesn't struggle, he doesn't fight back, he just submits. He even tells Kratos to do it, to kill him. I think Baldur has wanted to die this entire game. He is unhappy, he is a miserable character. He doesn't like being filled with anger and hate, but he also doesn't see any way out except through death. He feels hopeless. Even now, when he finally has what he's always wanted, he would still welcome death. As powerful as he is, Baldur is also a pitiful character. And then Freya, without meaning to, only makes it worse. The break in Freya and Baldur's relationship came when she refused to allow him to face death on his own terms. When she heard the prophecy of his death, instead of allowing him the freedom of dealing with that on his own, she took that freedom away from him. She decided for him that he wouldn't die. And that's what she does here too. She does the exact same thing again. Baldur is ready to die. He has accepted his death. Of course, we, the audience, understand why she does this. He is her son. She loves him. She cannot watch him die. But from Baldur's perspective, his mother will not stop controlling his fate. He wants to die, and she just won't let him. That's why he's so furious here. After that, once again, Baldur is given a clear, explicit choice. This will turn out to be his last chance to make a different choice. His last chance to walk a different path, though he doesn't know it yet. All he has to do is walk away, which ironically is exactly what he says to Kratos. But the truth is, neither of them can walk away. Because of his anger, Baldur cannot let his mother live. And because of his compassion, Kratos cannot let Baldur kill her. When Baldur says no, when he refuses to make a different choice, that's what seals his fate. That's why he has to die. This final scene very closely mirrors Odin's death in Ragnarok. Odin is given the exact same choice. Do something different. Make a different choice. Walk any other path. Help us spare you. Help us let you live. Both Odin and Baldur share the same fatal flaw, that inability to change. Both God of War 4 and Ragnarok are stories about characters changing, trying to be better, making better choices. It's exactly because he learns to make better choices that Kratos is able to survive Ragnarok in spite of his prophesied death. And it's exactly because of their inability to make better choices that both Baldur and Odin are ultimately destroyed. Baldur is easily my favorite villain in the God of War series, because by the end of the game, he is so sympathetic and so human, but also so hopeless. At the end, I don't want Kratos to have to kill this guy, but I also don't see any other choice. He was given so many chances, so many opportunities, but he willingly and purposely refuses each of them. He can blame his mother for making him this way, for ruining his life, but the truth is that he chose to be this person, to be who he is. He chose anger, he chose hate, he chose revenge. In the end, he ruined his own life. He cared more about getting revenge than getting his life back. He didn't get to choose whether to be cursed by his mother's spell, but he did get to choose how he lived his life afterwards. And he lived it violently, corrosively, destroying everything around him. And in the end, he destroyed himself too. Of all of Odin's tragic sons, I think Baldur is the most pitiable. Thor ultimately did try to be a better man. Heimdall never cared enough to even realize he had a choice, but Baldur saw the choice, understood it, and still chose self-destruction. He made that choice like 5 times in a row. He's all the more sympathetic because we can see so much of Kratos in him. If Kratos, who killed so many innocents in his own past, who was so lost to his own anger, could eventually learn to be better when given the chance, then surely so could Baldur. But Baldur is incapable of making that choice, and so he ultimately has to be put down like a rabid dog for the safety of everyone around him.